co-hosts together to just introduce themselves, tell us something about themselves, and then we are going to go right into our conversation. All right. Faith, maybe we can start with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me here. It's been really a wonderful conversation. This is our third conversation. And I must say, even as I come here, I pride myself to be a student of leadership. So every Tuesday, I have my notebook ready and my pen ready to learn. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Ernest.
All right. Thank you very much, Imani Maura, for being part of us. Chris, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, you just found me trying to set up, but I hope you can hear me and you can see me and you can see the leaders behind me, because we are having a conversation about impact and leadership and vision and execution. These are people who executed. My name is Chris Muriithi. I am a human capacity development consultant. What that simply means is that I equip human beings like you and I with relevant knowledge, skills, and attitudes to help us succeed in this 21st century and probably and hopefully be better human beings. Over to you, Ernest.
All right. Okay. Thank you for being part of us. And of course, we're going to have one of our other guests present to just also join us in this conversation today. I think the biggest question for us today, and one that we are going to delve in more, is how is your impact? I think one of the biggest challenges that we've found with individuals is that sometimes they're not able to land on being able to say, am I really making an impact? How well is my life being lived out? And does it matter? I'm always going back to this conversation that at the day of your burial, people will come. And when they come to your burial, there will be two conversations. One part of that conversation will be individuals saying, you know, this person was very important to us. We like what they did, how they challenged us. And the other side of that conversation are people, they are like, you know what, we are just related, or yeah, he was a friend of a friend, you know, and so they go back, just come to just, you know, close your case, say it was good you lived. But there are some people who should be able to say, if especially you're thinking about legacy, the whole conversation of how much did you impact people's lives? What was important about your life that when people look at it, they're like, there's no reason why we should actually miss out on this individual. And maybe to ask, Chris, what are your thoughts about the conversation of impact? What are your thoughts?
Two things.
Mm-hmm.
If your absence will not make a difference, your presence was not necessary. If when you leave, nobody will miss you, my friend, you are a waste of space. So and that's what impact is all about. What do you leave in people? And that's a conversation we are supposed to be having. What do you know? There are people who die, and 6 months down the line, people don't realize that he died.
Yes,
because he was inconsequential while he lived. And that makes a majority of people. I was driving behind a truck, and you know, trucks have funny message that written. And on this particular one, ilikuwa imeandikwa, ishi vizuri, usije kudanganya kwa mazishi yako. That was the message on the truck, that live well so that you don't have to lie in your funeral. Because people lie a lot in funeral out of the respect for the dead. But the only way to let people onge ukweli is to live well and to live with impact. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And good point that you've mentioned. So that then would mean that individuals that will not be missed, or part of their lives didn't really make a huge difference, were not worth living. It means then every day I'm either challenging people by making the right decisions, or the impact in people's lives, is actually affecting my rather, let me put it this way, that if I am not deliberately investing in people and impacting them, then I'm really calling myself irrelevant and losing my legacy now. Oh,
That's
interesting.
correct.
Interesting. So maybe to all of us, maybe let me ask a question or two. Have you ever thought about the impact that you are having on people? Have you ever thought about the impact that you're having on people? And I don't know, Chris, can you see my slides?
I can see you're sharing the screen, but I can see nothing beyond that. It's a blank screen.
Okay. I think I've just lost my slides. No problem. I think I'm sure I'm gonna figure out. Oh yeah, I think I have an idea what happened. Okay. Anyway, so here is a conversation today, and I want to ask you a couple of questions to just evaluate how well am I as an individual impacting people? Is my life important? Does my life make a difference? And maybe the first question I'd like to ask all of us is, do you think your life matters? Do you think your life matters? Does it matter that you are existing? Does it matter that you are an individual who should be making an impact, or it doesn't? Should it matter that you as an individual should be every single day, when you wake up in the morning, the relationships you're gonna have, you are intentional to ask yourself, what is the impact of my life on these individuals? Because if legacy is the memory that people are gonna have about you and what you did, maybe things you did and the impact you had on people's life, it should be reflected back to your everyday. So if you'll evaluate yourself, and I always like to give two figures, very satisfied, a bit satisfied, you're neutral, dissatisfied, or very dissatisfied. Where would you place yourself in terms of impact? Where would you place yourself? In fact, give yourself a rating. Would you say, people looking at you, think about it, think of 3 or 4 of your best friends. They are talking about you and they are thinking, does this guy really make a difference in our lives? What would they say about you? Would they say that, yeah, this person is not just taking space. They are actually, in a sense, challenging us. They are growing us, they're helping us to become better. What would 3 of your best friends say? Let me go to a couple of more questions to just evaluate further this conversation, because I think it's a valid conversation for us to be able to have. So what is the role of impact in legacy? What is the role of impact? Does it matter really the role that impact have on legacy? So you have all these things, all these people who are in your life, the people you work with, the family you come from, all these things, all these people are important. Would you say that you're deliberately impacting them so that the legacy you want can become a reality as an everyday thing, where your legacy impacts every single thing you do with the individuals that are in your life? You see, if I know, for example, I want to make a difference. In fact, let me give you a story of someone who inspired me a lot. John Maxwell, I think around 10 years ago, said that he wanted to have he called it a 1 million leaders mandate. And his idea was, I think it was actually 6 million. And the idea was he wants to be able to impact. And he was making books, he was making videos. Before long, they actually had them say that they had actually hit the mark that they intended. So because of the goal, the legacy goal he had of impacting, resulted into daily activities and things he was doing deliberately to be able to make that difference. Would you say your life is that intentional? What are some of the things you're doing? What's your impact on people? Does it matter, the memory that you want people to have? And is it important that you're willing to be able to work on that legacy that you want? A quote by Anita Roddick is one of my favorites. And this is what it says, that if you think you are too small to make an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito. Just think about it. You think you're too small to make an impact? Have you ever gone to bed and there's a mosquito nearby? Do you know a mosquito can actually trouble your night? Now, if a mosquito can make an impact and give you a headache a whole night, how about your life? How important is your life and the impact it can have in people's lives? Just one mosquito making a difference. What about a whole human being with a personality, with a purpose, with priorities, with all these things that you're ordained by God with, that you should actually be able to impact other people. So for those of you who are thinking, I probably wasn't meant to make an impact, just think about a mosquito. And one of these days, maybe you should do an experiment and just allow a mosquito to hang out and see how long you'd survive without, responding to this mosquito. You realize that you will look for it because it will trouble your life. So imagine on the opposite side, being able to be deliberate in making, even if it's a very small impact in the lives of the people that you have. And that's a good code there for you to just think about. So small, 2 or 3 questions here. How satisfied are you on your current level of impact? How satisfied are you on your current level of impact? Would you say you're very satisfied? Would you say you're satisfied? You're neutral? You're dissatisfied? You're very dissatisfied? Where would you place yourself? And what about your company or your business? How satisfied are you with your company or business impact? Is your company making a difference in people's lives? And not just the customers. What about the people who work there? Is there a deliberate impact in the lives of the people who are existing within your organization? Are you making a difference or you're just taking space? Where would you rate yourself? Very satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, very dissatisfied? You see, if you can look at this, you can actually be able to say, I think I'm neutral. Because most people, they like to live a mediocre life. Whether I make an impact or not, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to be able to have that conversation and ask ourselves then, if this thing is so important, then what do we do? As we have this conversation, and I'm going to invite Imani to come and share with us. Think about this conversation in this way. As these ideas are being shared, think about it. Would you say you are poor, you are a 1, or 10 excellent in the points that are going to be shared? Or you can also still use the same idea of very satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, very dissatisfied. The point is, by the time we're done with this conversation, we really want you to have a personal evaluation of where you are exactly. So, Imani Mora, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Wow, already that's a very powerful introduction right there. I just wanted to say that great minds think alike. Both you and Chris have already taken the words out of my mouth when Chris talked about if your absence does not make a difference, then your presence was not needed. And that's the power of impact. And even as you talked about the mosquito, I want to start off by just looking at the dictionary definition of this word impact. For us to be able to even just to be on the same page is just to look at the definition of the word impact. And as we have it, that it's a powerful effect that something has on a person or a situation. Impact talks about the effect. Impact talks about what you leave behind on someone. And I like it. It doesn't say whether it's positive or negative, but it's an effect, and we'll get into that. Another definition says that the action of one object coming forcibly into contact with another. And it talks, this to me is about the power of impact, the power of influence, that the action of one object coming forcibly into contact. And then a third definition that we see is that it's a marked effect or influence. So when we talk about impact, we're basically talking about this thing called effect. We're talking about influence. We're talking about just the contact. What that means when you get into contact with something. I have a couple of stories maybe to help us understand this thing called impact. I remember a couple of years ago, I went on a mission trip. And in this mission trip, I was assigned a room, and in this room were 2 other ladies who joined me. The following day in the morning, as I was making my bed the way I know how to, one of the ladies asked me, did you go to this XYZ high school? And I said yes, but I was a little baffled, as in, why did you ask me that? And then she said, my sister went to the same school and she made the bed the same way. Now you have to understand the school that I went to, part of the orientation as a Form 1 the first early days, we were taught how to make a bed. There was a particular angle. There was a particular angle that you had to fold your blankets. And I kid you not, after doing that for 4 years, that became my lifestyle. And it's not only me, but many of my schoolmates, classmates, that I know that that is still the way until today I make my bed. We are talking about impact and the influence that my high school had on me. Another story earlier today, I attended a session on the status of fatherhood in Kenya. And at the end of the session, the moderator asked these two panelists of what experience they had with their father. Now, it's interesting how these two panelists responded. The first one said, my experience was not that positive. However, it has inspired me to help parents to create an environment conducive to bring up their children in a better way. This person that I'm talking about is today a therapist and a parenting coach. While the second panelist said that my father had such a positive impact. My father and my grandfather, that was quite interesting. When he even got back to his grandfather, not just his father, had a positive impact on him. And this person today is a highly sought after speaker in matters to do with fatherhood and family life. What is so interesting is that this gentleman, and maybe when I speak about him, some of you will be able to pick out who it is a doctor, has his PhD in veterinary studies. However, his area of influence or his sphere of influence or the things he is doing today is in the areas of fatherhood and family matters. Why am I sharing these stories with us? I'm talking about the impact. I'm talking about influence. I'm talking about that strong contact that people have had. Now, every one of us has the power to make an impact in the world. It really depends upon you as an individual. What type of impact do you really, or are you determined to make? You can either make a positive impact or you can make a negative impact. Each one of you has the power to do that. And I want to highlight 3 areas that we look at when we are talking about, or rather that I want us to look at today when we are talking about impact. The 3 areas, the first one is on the words. Think about your words. I always say that words influence others. Words build relationships. Words destroy or tear down relationships. Our words carry such enormous weight, more than we can sometimes think or imagine. Again, I want to share with us another story I had, or rather, this is someone that I know who tells about the story that when they got to standard 4, maybe in the current age, we should talk about grade 4. When they got to grade 4, they went into a new school. And in this new school, of course, just trying to settle in, meeting these new classmates. And I mean, on the first day, could not speak with anybody. But a couple of days later, as they went out for games, this one boy stood out and said, "You have such a big nose." Yes, I took a pause there for you to internalize that. And what this did to this boy, his demeanor just changed. And it took many years, close to 20 years, for him to have his own self-confidence. Those words by his peer, by his age mate, it wasn't even anybody older than him. When he was told, "You have such a big nose," it just crushed him. It took many years for him to change that thinking. I want to ask you, what words do you use with the people around you? Are you aware of the impact? Are you aware of the effect? Are you aware of the influence that your words have to the people around you? Allow me to quote a verse I love in the Bible, in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. And this is the Message version. It says, watch the way you talk. Let nothing fall or dirty come out of your mouth. Say only what helps. Consider each word a gift. If I may ask you, how do you use your words? And are you aware of the impact that these words have in the people around you? It could be your peers. It could be even your seniors. It could be even your juniors. It could be even people who are strangers or not known to you. One of the things I should have mentioned earlier is that every time, any opportunity we have, we are making an impact. And we could be impacting somebody who we know, or we could be impacting somebody who we may never know. Think about people like Nelson Mandela. Think about people like Mother Teresa. Years later, after they are gone, I mean, some of us never had an opportunity to meet them, but some of their words are the words that keep us going even today. Their words have had an influence in us. I keep on saying one of the people who has influenced me from a distance is the late Miles Monroe. I'm one of those people who watched and listened and read everything that they wrote. His words had a power of impact in my life. The other area I want us to look at, the second thing in terms of impact, is in our actions. What is it that you do with the time that you have, with the people that you have, that are around you? If I could just maybe mention some things that are very familiar with us. The impact of deforestation, the impact of global warming is about actions that people did. This could be positive actions, it could be negative actions. And maybe if I could just talk about our current situation, COVID. We have been told the actions, wearing of your masks, washing of your hands, keeping the distance, all those are actions and the impact that they will have with the people around us. Now, even as we talk about impact and legacy, where after you are gone, the actions that you did, what did they do to the people that you left behind? I gave you the story of the impact that my high school had in making the bed, that angle in making the bed. Way many years after I left high school, I still find myself doing that. Maybe many years after you're gone, could it be the actions, the things that you're doing will be left behind? And that will be the memory that people will have about you, and actions that you will be able to impact, to influence the actions of the people who are coming way after you. So we have talked about your words, we have talked about your actions, and the third thing I want to highlight about areas of impact and influence is on the decisions that we make. And at this juncture, I just want to speak to every one of us who is at that peak, or rather at that point where you make decisions on the behalf of others. Again, I want to talk about our current situation in the country right now. With COVID, there are decisions that are made at the top that will influence us, that will impact our businesses. I think about things to do with travel. I think about things to do with the hours that have been put for our restaurants. Decisions had to be made because they impact, they influence others. But let me ask you, the decisions that you have to make, maybe for your children, maybe for your employees, maybe for your team, the team that you're leading, have you ever thought of the impact it will have on the days to come? Some of us are at a point of making decisions of hiring and firing, if I could use that example, do you realize the impact that that has on that individual when you hire somebody and you just change their lives? Or when you fire somebody and you just change, you just impact their lives. So the decisions we make on a personal level, maybe on you as an individual, on your family, on your neighborhood, when you decide to litter around, for example, do you realize that decision that made you act a certain way has influence, has an impact, maybe not just today, but even in the days to come? And even after highlighting these three areas, then with that in mind, what are you gonna do just to make sure that you leave a positive impact? Because remember, your impact could either be positive or negative. But what I want to share with us next is, what are you going to do to start your impact? One of the things I want to highlight to us tonight is becoming self-aware. Become self-aware of your words, of your actions, of your decision. That you will just not say anything. You will just not do anything. You will just not make a hasty decision. But you will become aware that the words you speak, the actions you do, the decisions you make have an impact, have an influence, have an effect to somebody there. It could be immediate, it could be in the years to come. The second thing is be intentional. So when you become self-aware, then you become even intentional in the words you're gonna speak. If I could just go back to the point of becoming self-aware, if you knew somebody was listening to you, if you knew somebody was watching you today, would you make the same decision? Would you make the same action? Would you say the same words that you're saying? Because sometimes we just say it for the sake of it. We just react instead of acting in an aware manner. And that leads me to being intentional. Be intentional in the words you use. You could be intentional to build somebody up. You could be intentional to encourage somebody. You could be intentional to make sure that your words and your action teach somebody a positive thing. I am reminded of my childhood growing up, and those who know me know that one of the greatest blessings I say that I have is on the parents that I have. And my father was very, very intentional with his actions and his words. May I dare reveal here that I am a pastor's kid. But one of the things I confidently will say is that my father was a pastor in our house first before he was a pastor out there. That his actions, his words, and his decisions really showed us as a family, my siblings, my mother, my relatives, by extension, who he really was. He was very, very intentional, not just to do it in church, but also to do it in his house. And I want to ask you, are you intentional in the way you even live your life to know that you will have an impact even in the generations to come? And the third thing I want to highlight is going the Kaizen way. If you're hearing this Kaizen for the first time today, is just a concept that was that has been embraced when you think about the brand Toyota and what they do. I mean, there are so many brands of Toyota out there, and one of the things they do is a continuous improvement. They never stop. Like almost every year, they bring out a new model or they advance it. It's a continuous way that you will not just settle for the Toyota Corolla, the 2010 version. Every year they improve on it. And what about yourself? When you become self-aware and intentional about the impact that you're going to leave. Remember, we are talking about impact and your legacy. When you become aware of this, then you will find it important for you to continuously make yourself better. It could be in the books that you read. It could be in the forums you engage yourselves into, maybe something like this, tuning into something like this to learn something new or to improve what you have. And so I just want to stop there and remind us a quote that we used even in the first forum, and I love it. And I want to remind us this, that if your actions inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And may I add, you are a leader with a positive impact. Over to you, Ernest.
Wow. Thank you so much. That is just amazing. In fact, to just review, so in essence, if an individual is going to become the leader that they should be, they need to really rethink how their daily lives are being lived out. And I actually want to just go back to just preview that. And as I share my highlight, and then Chris can also share his highlight from this conversation. The word we speak, the actions we take, and the decisions we make. Maybe my highlight is actually decisions. Seems like every day I have to make a decision between making an impact in the lives of people or just living my own life and just being, life just being about me and what I want and what I like. And it's like, it's an everyday decision that I have to make. Will I make an impact in the lives of people? Will I add value to them? Or will I just allow them to just be and lose? That is a huge takeout for me. Chris, what's your biggest takeout from this conversation?
First off, have you ever been to a Harambe, a fundraiser, and then the fellow before you gives 100,000? Na wewe ulikuwa na kachwani, ulikuwa na ka 50 bob. And you know how the MC will shout out the amount. It feels the same way to speak after Imani, because she has really done justice to this particular topic on impact. I think, and this coming from it's a high. Thank you. I can't forget the things you've actually said. Memorable, as in, watch your words, watch your actions, watch your decisions. Be self-aware, be intentional, and kaizen. Always improving, always getting better. I think you have really done justice. And just to reiterate what you've said, when I was in campus many years back, I never missed a lecture. Never, not one. Okay, one. I missed one. And the one lecture I missed, I was nursing a friend of mine, a lady, not a man. I could not be nursing a man. So I was nursing this lady because she was not feeling too well. So I stayed with her. I prepared her food. She was my very good friend. Or so I thought. And she's the only reason I missed a lecture for 4 years in campus. Then one day we were walking to class and she said something. She said, I miss home because that's the only place I have true friends. That's what she told me, that I miss home because that's the only place I have true friends. Now, I was there and I remembered I have never missed a lecture, save because of you, to take care of you. And you see those words, they ruined that friendship. We never talked from that day. And I think I was in third year. To date, we have never had a conversation. If anything is high, I don't know if she knows what happened, but those words had such a deep impact in me that it ruined that friendship. And can you imagine? It was such a simple, it was probably even meaningless, but she was not intentional in her words. So yes, words have impact, but beyond words, our actions. Abraham Lincoln said, your actions speak so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying. And I like that Imani is a pastor's kid. Now, most pastors' kids, sorry to say, they end up being wayward. And I will tell you why. Because over the weekend, when the father is on the pulpit, he's talking about love is kind, love is patient, love is long-suffering. We should love each other like Christ loved us. But when they get home, they are the opposite of patient, loving, and long-suffering. In fact, they make others suffer long. So, and that's why most kids, most pastors' kids, they don't see a connection of the man, of the words that are spoken at the pulpit, and the man living at home. And then they lose value for this God that you're talking about. And eventually they run. So to hear that Imani's father was what he was in the house, was exactly what he was on the pulpit, is a breath of fresh air. And yes, actions will always speak louder than words. It doesn't matter. And you see, there's this fellow who used to come home drunk, and he would knock on the door, and the wife would be angry. And he says, I'm sorry, honey, you know I love you. And he would constantly do that. You know I love you. He would come drunk and make a mess. And then when the wife is angry, he would say, you know I love you. One day he came home. He found the door locked. He tried to knock. The wife did not open. And he tried to say, oh, wife, you know I love you. And the wife responded, if you love me, prove it. And why is the proving? The proving is in our actions. So the words you say must be backed up by the actions you take. And lastly, the decisions you make. There's in physics, we studied Newton's laws of motion. The third law was that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For every decision, there's a consequence. And especially for those of us in leadership positions, when you make a decision, you know that the impact will be far-reaching. When you hold a public office and you decide this money that is meant to construct the road, I will steal it. Now you see, that road will get potholes. Those potholes will make a car have an accident, and that accident will kill someone, maim someone. That person who dies or loses their livelihood, their children drop out of school. So you have a home with a father who cannot, or a mother who cannot provide. We have children who are out of school. There's no hope in that home, all because somebody made a decision to divert public funds. The decisions we make have far-reaching impact. Now, ngoma ikipigwa sana upasuka. So wacha nisimamie hapo.
All right, thank you very much for adding value and sharing. I totally agree with you. And maybe a good question here for all of us. How satisfied are you on your current level of impact? Looking at your words, looking at your actions, looking at your decisions. How satisfied? Do you think there are areas you need to improve and work on? Are there things you're doing, activities your company, your organization is doing, and what are the impact? And I like the fact that, Chris, you mentioned leaders. They are like, if I can highlight, I want to highlight a couple of things I think leaders can be able to. Leaders who have impact or impact leaders have 6 qualities, and they have the same acronym impact. Number 1, they have intentionality. There's no way you can be able to make an impact and legacy if you're not intentional. You must be intentional. There must be intentionality in your actions, in your words. And I like the fact that, Imani has totally aired that one out. Number 2, there must be maturity, which means there are things you cannot do or you won't do, not because you can't, but because they will affect the impact that you want to have. the legacy that you want to have. So you must be like, for example, I can't mentor and grow other people if I haven't reached the state of being mature, where I actually recognize what is true and false, and I live by truth. I'm mature in that regard to even be able to teach others. There must also be something that we call purity of heart, of honestly willing to make an impact in the lives of people. Saying whatever I can do in my heart that can make the lives of people better. Like this conversation is out of the purity of our hearts, thinking we can't just die with the truths that we know. We must be willing to share out. We feel staying with this information doesn't help us. But there are leaders who will listen and they will make a difference. Where your motive, so you don't have insecurity because you know you can never be replaced by people. You are purely working from a heart that is true. The other areas there, and just to highlight, the other three areas are what I call, so we have intentionality, we have maturity. The other one that I like and one of my best is authenticity. And I know I have a brother over here, Boniface, who totally loves this conversation on authenticity, that you're real with yourself. So you know what you do best, you know what you don't do best. You're not trying to pretend you are somebody that you are not. As a leader, people will look at you and they can tell a fake from very far. So you're real. So in your intentions, in whatever you do, you're being very, very, very real. Then there's also charity that has to do with love. You see, you can't impact people you don't love. Love is at the core of this conversation. There must be a willingness to go beyond yourself, to make sacrifices, to serve people, so that out of their lives, out of your life, or them rubbing their lives with yours, they are so impacted. Love is a requirement. There's no way to impact people without loving them. And, for most of us, the truth is, the idea of being patient and kind and all gentle and having self-control, it's an issue of love. And then, lastly, is tenacity, the ability to continue to do it, regardless of challenge, making an impact. Whether I see the results now or not, I will continue to do it. And my personal story about this on tenacity is I've been mentoring young people the last 19 years. I mean, continually, every year, bringing a few young people. There are some that have made it, there are some that haven't made it. But when I look back, many years later, I see some of the people who are key leaders somewhere. And I remember I met them when they were, 13 years old. I look back and I'm like, I am glad I was persistent and I continued to do this. So the question will be, are you an impact leader? What are ways in which you can be able to grow in your intentionality, in your maturity, in your ability to be able to say, you know what, whatever I need to do from my heart, I'll do it. Giving my best, being authentic, having charity and tenacity. Those are things that you may not be able to avoid. So especially for you as a leader and you're leading people, are these qualities a reality in your life? Imani, what are things that we can conclude with? What would be your advice for leaders who are here and they're impacting people and they want to leave a legacy?
First of all, I want to just read a comment that someone has posted on Facebook. We're so glad for everybody who has joined us on Facebook and is interacting with us. Mary Nyoike says, decisions drive intentionality. Intentionality drives impact. That's a quotable quote from one of our viewers, and we really, really appreciate that. Join us every Tuesday, even as we continue to talk this. Now, Ernest, allow me to mention something I learned from you and I hope to embrace. Maybe really a practical way of ensuring that you have impact. You see, impact can be, what is it called? Can be formal or informal. And when I say formal or informal, it could be those sessions you have for mentorship and coaching, where you're deliberate and intentional, that you have a session to leave an impact, something like this that has been deliberate and has been planned for. But another way is where it's informal, where you really, your actions, they just speak out even to a stranger, you didn't really mean, today I am acting this role out of being an impactful leader. So if I could just touch something on being impactful and where you make it formal or intentional is on the area of mentorship. And something that Ernest, I was hoping that you talk about it, but allow me to say, it's something Ernest calls 411. 411 is where you can actually get 4 people to mentor, and you meet each one of them at least once every month. So any leader who's listening to us, and I thought this is such a brilliant thing that I'm going to embrace and take it up. Let's become intentional in impacting those behind us, that way after we are gone, somebody is going to be speaking what you've been talking about, you know? You can use that as one of the ways where you can impact generations to come. So 411 is one of the ways you can do, and maybe Ernest will expound it, if not today, maybe later. Another way is just taking advantage of opportunities in our churches, in our schools. A couple of weeks ago in my church, one of our leaders was just talking about where schools are even missing someone to go and preach during a CU session. And these young girls and young boys in their teenage years, they really want somebody, but there is nobody. Okay, and we took up the challenge, and we hope in 2021 as my life group, we will take that challenge and at least commit, if not once or twice a term, we can go out to schools and give of our time. Let's share our struggles and failures, maybe to help somebody. So let's become intentional in impacting people. Let's become intentional in impacting our teenage, especially my heart goes out to the teenagers. And I love speaking to them. I was at a very good place in my teenage years. And at the same time, I think I got some of the challenges in life that I'm able to speak and relate to them. So let's take advantage of such things, and let's become intentional, deliberate in living an impact, especially where, I mean, formal is such a big word, but I mean, where it's an organized setting, you know, where your life, you can share your life story, you can share your struggles, you can share your successes to be able to help somebody and leave a positive influence, a positive impact. Thank you.
Oh, wow. And Boniface, you've been part of this conversation. What are your words? What do you think about this conversation on impact? Boniface, are you there? It seems like we can't hear you. Okay, well, it seems like Boniface is not being heard. I'm not sure what's going on.
You can hear me?
Yes, now you're better.
I'm here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear?
Yes. Well, seems like we are losing Bonnie. Would have loved to hear his thoughts on the same, but it's fine. So, and actually next week, we are actually going to bring this conversation as we talk about execution. I'll actually share how impact has affected my legacy as a practical example of how we can actually begin to deliberately bring the conversation of how do we impact deliberately. And I'll be sharing but as Imani shared, one of the ways to impact people is simply a very simple strategy, and I'll say more next week, but at least now that you're here, I better say it. So you pick 4 young people, and you have 4 weeks in a month, and every week you just spend 1 hour with 1 young person. And the idea is, sit down with them, do life with them, figure out where they are at, what challenges they are facing, Be a listening ear. And then if you have wisdom to share with them, you share wisdom with them. And you do that. So you pick, week 1, you pick, Mark, you pick week 2, pick Luke, week 3, you pick John, week 4, you pick Matthew. You can pick a Mary, you can pick a Martha, you can pick a Jane, you can pick a Joyce. And the idea is just once a week, 1 hour. But then you are so deliberate, you actually do it for 1 whole year. And the idea is this: what if you could just invest 1 hour a week? In the 168 hours that you have, just 1 hour of impacting someone deliberately. How would that make in terms of impact and in terms of your legacy? Do you know what it actually means? In 5 years, you'd have 20 young people who are deliberately affected and impacted by your life. Very, very deliberately. Because that hour is a very specific time that you're dedicating to impact these guys. Is that something that you can do? 1 hour a week? Let's say even 4 are too many. What about 2 every month? 2 hours every month. And the idea is, for us, impact is just a deliberate investment in the lives of people. I know we need to come to bring this conversation to an end. Bwana Chris, what will be your last words moving forward? How do you think the leaders who are here can begin making an impact?
I'll just give you an example from a man I admire. His name was Jesus. Mm-hmm. And Jesus worked for only 3 years, 3.5 years to be precise. Mm-hmm. And the organization he started then has over 32% of the global population as its clients today. Christ did not build buildings. He just called 12 people and poured his life into them. You are saying 411, he picked 12 and poured his life into them for a period of only 3 years. And he exited as a CEO of that company and handed the baton over to one Peter. 2,000 years later, his name has not left our lips. His words still ring strong in our ears today. He poured his life into people. And that, my friend, is true impact. He did not invest in cars or buildings or houses or watches, he invested in people. And impact is about what you live in people. I was speaking somewhere and I said, as far as parenting is concerned, what you live in your children is more important than what you to your children. Because what you leave to your children could disappear. But what you leave in your children, they will live with it. That's why pass to them the most important things that are not subject to decay. And it's the same with leadership. What do you leave in the lives of those that you come into contact with? So my challenge is find people in your space. It doesn't have to be 4 young people. It can be 4 young leaders in your organization. It can be the people below you in your organization. Find them. And then pour your life into them. There's a point where Jesus said, I no longer call you servants, for the servants know not what the master thinketh, but I call you friends, because all that I knew of my Father, I have made known unto thee. Now that's mentorship. And mentorship is the highest manifestation of leadership maturity. Immature people cannot mentor others. Immature people cannot come to such conversations and share the knowledge that they have. And while it may be tiring at times, you may be pouring your life out, you don't see results. I want to suggest a song for you. I don't know if we are able to find it, but there's a song called There's a Place for People Like You. I hope you can just find it. I can't even remember the musician's name, but it's a song.
We'll look for it next week.
Yes, I have it here, but I will share it next week. There's a place for people like you. Even when things don't to be moving, even when you are pouring your tears, blood and sweat, there's a place for you. So go ye out there, have impact, mentor people, pour your life into others. Thank you.
Wonderful. Imani, what are your concluding thoughts?
For me, I'd like to encourage people to just tune in. Tell somebody to tell somebody to tell somebody. Every Tuesday, come and get these nuggets. You know, everything rises or falls on leadership. These are quite wonderful leadership conversations we are having. We're talking about legacy, we're talking about impact, we spoke about vision. And so these are areas that are very, very important in our time today. So I just want to encourage people next week, join us at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and let's have this conversation. Thank you.
All right, okay, we are looking forward to see you next week. What are you going to do about impacting people? Are you going to just look at it? What are your growth action points in impact for your leadership and for your legacy? You are made to make a difference. You are meant to impact people. If you think you're too little, remember the mosquito. This was a good conversation. Looking forward to see you next week. Have a great time. And look for somebody you can impact in your home, where you work, in your community. You can make a difference.